Alex Dono of Locked On Canes. The idea of Miami being in the Big 12 is not sexy. It's not flashy. The Big 10 and the SEC certainly are. What is the perception from Canes fans of that program being a Big 12 school?
Moaning and groaning. The perception is that going from the ACC in its current form to the Big 12 and, its current form, obviously it'd look a little bit different if multiple teams enter, that it's basically just the ACC with a different logo and a few more travel miles to, play some of the schools that are in the Big 12 now. So, I don't think any Miami fan would say that would be fantastic. Well, let's get out of this ACC. Let's go lock, stock, and barrel into the Big 12. No disrespect to anyone who watches Locked On Big 12, but I don't think that Miami fans.
I think you're kind of saying lateral move here, right? I don't think there's any disrespect here. It's just it's a lateral move. It is.
Yeah, like I wouldn't say it's a step down, but it's a lateral move. So it's like, I think any time when Miami fans imagine what a conference realignment, what that would look like for Miami, and you're fantasizing about that, you're thinking about, wouldn't it be really cool to play, USC sometimes, to play Ohio State, Michigan on a semi-regular basis, to play, Alabama, to play Florida again as a regular part of the schedule, whether you're dreaming about the Big 10 or the SEC. I don't think anyone's going to bed at night and dreaming about being in the Big 12 and, hey, we could play UCF on a regular basis.
That is, I think the concept of the UCF Miami regular season conference game is one that really hinders fans. It's tough to get behind. I understand it coming from Texas schools that feel the same way about who they consider to be little brothers and irrelevance. So when it comes to the idea of then the Big 12 as a lifeboat, like I take a Utah, for example, they wanted to stay in the Pac-12. They were forced into the Big 12 because the Big 10 and the SEC ended up balking. And because of that, it almost feels like you're on the lifeboat, but you were the captain of the ship and you really didn't mind all that much going down with it. For Miami, do you fight tooth and nail to keep the ACC alive? Or if the Big 12 is there as a lifeboat, is there an opportunity that you take?
I get the sense that, and this is not a popular opinion among Miami fans, but all I can base this on is what the athletic director at Miami, Dan Radakovich, what he has said publicly, because we don't hear. I'm not in there. I'm not a fly on the wall. I don't know what's being said behind closed doors. They seem to really want to, at least this is what they're saying, they want to fight to keep the ACC alive. I feel, Radakovich, Miami's AD, as of about 2 months ago, probably, I think it was in the early days of spring football, I'm going to say probably early March, was on a popular sports radio show in the area. And, he said all the right things about the ACC. No, we're not going to sue them like Florida State and Clemson are doing. We want to keep this conference together. We appreciate the fact that, it's a conference that is involved in the college football playoff with the guaranteed bid for the champion and all that. So publicly, they seem to be in full support of the ACC. But again, sometimes you say things when you don't necessarily mean them, because at the same time, not that Miami has lived up to their end of the bargain, because yes, when the ACC added Miami back in 2004 was the first season in the league, everyone thought, well, it's Miami and Florida State are going to be playing for an ACC championship every single year. Miami has not lived up to their end of the bargain whatsoever. I also don't feel like the ACC has lived up to their end of the bargain for any of their members. I mean, their reigning conference champion is currently suing them. They've fallen behind when it comes to the revenue gap. The officiating in the ACC is consistently terrible, which I know is something that a lot of schools have a problem with, why they can't raise a better standard there. So, yeah, listen, when you bring up the lifeboat scenario, it changes the conversation, Drake, because at the end of the day, if the ACC were to either collapse, right, which not likely anytime soon, but it's possible, or if Florida State and Clemson and let's say a few others like North Carolina, Virginia, are teams that are talked about as potentially wanting to get out, if these teams were to find a way out, if these schools find a way out, it does definitely weaken the current conference, because you take Florida State and Clemson out of the ACC, doesn't really feel like a power conference anymore. So even if Miami may be giving off the impression publicly right now that they're happy in the conference and they want to fight to keep the conference around, the second you take Florida State and Clemson out of it, I see it as a much less valuable conference. And, the idea of, in that case, if the ACC either implodes and you need a lifeboat, or if the ACC is just not what it used to be, then, yeah, at least you could be in a situation, if you do have a soft landing spot in the Big 12, at least then you don't have to worry about some of the things that you worry about right now. Is the ACC going to get completely left out of potential collective bargaining talks? Or are they no longer going to be considered a power conference? Because, the Big 12 won't be what the SEC and the Big 10 are right now, but at least that would still be a power conference, when in this scenario, the ACC wouldn't be. So, yes, that would provide a nice security blanket for Miami if it came to that.
Look, no two ways around it. Miami's a profitable athletic department. That's why I think the Big 12 is so high on Miami. And the Big 10, it seems, wants to grab the Clemson, Florida State. That's priority. The SEC has been, to this point, pretty strict on keeping things where they are because of how profitable they are. And Dono, if the ACC loses its top two members, it looks like it will, the revenue just won't make a lot of sense anymore for a school that deserves more money like Miami. Is that a worry that when those two powers are gone, the Canes aren't getting what they deserve?
Yeah, it's definitely a worry. Some people take the other side of the coin, which I don't necessarily agree with this, but I think it's an important thing to bring up. Okay, that there can be some competitive value when it comes to a path into a 12, which is soon going to be a 14-team playoff. It's going to expand even further in a couple of years, and this is assuming the ACC were to keep the automatic conference champion bid, which they currently have, and, the opportunity at large spots, right? That you still have a path to the playoff, that, hey, maybe if you have a little bit easier of a schedule, and you're not having to play every single week, you're going from LSU to Ole Miss to Georgia to Bama, et cetera, and all the heavy hitters in the Big 10, that honestly, maybe you have a more clear path to the playoff being a big fish in the small pond. I do know some people who take that viewpoint. I think that viewpoint, though, Drake, can be a slippery slope, because if you're playing in a conference that's far less competitive, yes, in theory, you have an opportunity to have an easier path to the playoff every year, but then that would also assume you're still able to recruit competitively if you're in a diminished conference, which is not always a guarantee, and that, you're not hurt when NIL transfer portal, that you're not being hurt too much and being in a conference that makes less revenue, that you have to make up that revenue somewhere else. Are there wealthy donors behind the scenes that are going to say, hey, if our revenue gap is we're making net 30, 40 million less than everyone else, do we have someone who's going to step up and out of the goodness of their heart, they're going to donate 40 million to bridge that gap? Maybe not, probably not. But those are things to think about. Like, are you able to still recruit a team that's capable of competing with Power 2 teams, even if you're not part of that? I can't answer that question, but it's a question that, it's hard to guarantee a yes on that.
Dono, getting into if the big if of Miami is a Big 12 school moving forward, how we could bridge the gap and make this thing work, because it seems as though at least one entity really would like to make it happen here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, alongside Locked On Canes, your team every day. Look, no shock. I've been called competitive multiple times. And what do I respond with when I get called competitive? It's that the answer is yes, I am competitive. And I can flex that competitive nature at Monopoly Go. It is exciting every day to open an app where I can beat my friends. I know that might sound weird to you, but again, I'm competitive. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzy. So Monopoly Go is like the old-fashioned Monopoly you used to play, and you loved it, but now it's on your mobile device, and there are even more crazy options and crazy boards. You can even rob your friends' vaults, play against them, play with them. Monopoly Go gives you all of those options with unique stickers that you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, or cool new playing pieces to travel across multiple boards with. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench. Go download it now for free on Google Play and the App Store. It is Monopoly Go. Game on.